the Alta River, the greatest recreational fishing river in the world. In this film, we will bring you along on a journey all throughout the Alta River, a journey that will take us approximately 50 kilometers upstream. Along the way, you'll hear stories from local fishermen, stories you've probably never heard before. The names that will appear throughout the film are the names of each fishing spot along the river. Come along for the Alta River, meter by meter.
Jag fiskar i över 60 år i Alta.
I've been fishing in the Alta River for 60 years, and I still don't know the lower parts downstream from Forbygning. One time, Ivar Leinan, one of the previous managers of Ali, asked me to take some researchers upstream to Steinfossen. On our way back, we were to stop at Forbygning, but when we got there, one of the researchers asked me to go all the way downstream to the mouth of the river. At first, I hesitated, as I did not know which river course to follow. But one of the researchers, Jenny, knew the proper course, as she had been there a couple of times before. Downstreams towards Alvestrand, the river divides into several courses, which are hopeless to maneuver when you're not familiar with the waters.
Badomela er jo, jeg lov å si det er litt hemmelig, men badomela er mye bedre folk tror.
I do not know if I can tell you this, as it is considered somewhat of a secret, but Badomela is a lot better than people think. It is a fantastic fishing spot. The special thing about Badomela are the tidal waters that affect the river there. Speaking of tidal waters, now I'm not going to mention any names here, but it regards one of the board members of Ali. Him and one of his friends had heard the rumors about this spot and chose to set up camp there. Now the water level shifted several times a day, something they were not pleased about. They ended up getting really upset towards the Norwegian Water Resources and Energy Directorate that controls the Alta River Dam. Afterwards, someone came up to them and asked if they had ever heard of tidal forces. Well, needless to say, they did not feel very clever after that. Ellelaholmen of today has seen countless natural changes throughout the years. Today, the best spot is upstream at Ammoneset, where both sides of the river is straight. It is what we call a machine spot, as it is a long and somewhat boring section of the river, which has a lot of potential if there's a lot of fish in the river, and usually there are always some at Ammoneset.
På Ammones en gang så hadde jeg jo en historie her som
My craziest experience from the Alta River happened at Ammones. We started our day there, and I went out to throw. I threw my line across the stream, as the river is not that wide there. Just as my fly began to drift downstream, I felt that something started to pull. As the fish drifted along with my fly, I looked down to check if my gear was ready. That was when I noticed that my line was tangled up in my open set of nail clippers. I held on to my rod with one hand, as I was carefully trying to untangle my line with my other hand, but it would not come loose. I just had to pull, and just then the fish started swimming to cross the river. It jumped high up in the air, and I could see that it was an enormous salmon. I managed to tame the salmon onto land, and it weighed 20 kilos. It was just sitting there in the river, waiting for me to untangle my line before it put up a fight. It was such an adrenaline rush. To put it that way, that salmon was mine.
Elvestrand har jo alltid, altså...
There is always something going on at Elvestrand. For a while, everywhere between Nikkenakken and Forbygningen were great fishing spots. Then came the water pipe, or as we called it, Gjelløra. The council put down a water main along the bottom of the river and covered it with rocks. This created a pit, which in turn created a current. This became a fantastic spot for a while. This year, a small isle has appeared in the center of the river, causing the fish to go around the sides when the water level is high. It is especially a good spot when the salmon swims along the side, facing Raipas. I was there before midsummer, and my party caught 4 salmon in one night. It is a great spot. You are up close with the fish, since it is a narrow section of the river. A fun spot to fish indeed.
I Middelfare så hadde jeg også en kjempeopplevelse.
I had an amazing experience at Middelfare 3 years ago. Me, my partner and my son were there quite early in the season, around mid-June. We had already caught 2 salmon when my son hooked the 3rd one on the line. We started downstream towards the river bend where the fish had stopped. When we came around the bend, our boat was nearly on top of the fish, so my son pulled his line on board our boat. It must have been about 20 meters of line tangled up inside the boat. Right then we panicked a bit, but we managed to stop our motor and with some help from my partner, get the line reeled up. My son started pulling and the fish was still on. So we let the boat drift for a bit, and when we got in contact with the fish, it swam downstream. When we finally got on land and managed to tame the fish, the fly came loose. It was an exciting experience, but we managed to get the salmon onto land, even though it was mostly just luck. Middelfare has always been a good spot.
På Haraldholmen,
It was at Haraldholmen that I caught my very first salmon. It must have been in early July, during the early 1980s. I was there with my brother-in-law and some fishing veterans. The fish was jumping seemingly all the time. My brother-in-law had lost several salmon when I suddenly hooked one. The salmon started swimming downstream, so me and my brother-in-law followed it with one of the veterans rowing. We were taming and taming that salmon all the way down to Forbygninga, but it would not give in. It was at that point the veteran asked me if I was gonna give up soon. So I tightened my brake and managed to reel the salmon onto land. It was my very first salmon, and it weighed 15.5 kilos. So no wonder I was a bit clumsy. There were 200 German tourists waiting for me on land to take my photo, so it became a special experience.
Konfirmasjonsmiddagen måtte vi jo fiske selv.
Back in the day, we had to catch our own dinner for our confirmation. So cold salmon and sour cream were common for all confirmations in Øvre Alta. I caught mine in Djupolla, a spot that has seen many changes since then. I remember one time I went fishing in Haraldholmen, back when people could see you all the way from Forbygningen when you crossed the aisle. That's why I walked all the way to the top of the section, where no one could see me. As I was standing there, tying my line, I heard someone walk up on me. I did not know what to do. I considered burying my lure, but I knew there was no point in trying. Luckily, it turned out to be Jan Sivertsen that came towards me. He was also out fishing. Me and him had a lot of those short fishing trips together. We used to fish trout at Forbygningen, and we rarely went home empty-handed.
Ja, en gang I Langstilla så
Me and Kjetil Wisløff were boatmen in Langstilla at the end of July in 1994. Together with us, we had a man from New York named Morty Seaman. We started fishing around 8 o'clock in the evening and kept at it until 4 in the morning, and the weather was beautiful. We started out fishing in Åkergärde, Jorra and Langstilla. 15 minutes to 4, almost at the end of our day, we saw a salmon jumping. We decided to go for it, but the fish would not bite. We went back on land and Morty changed out his fly. He threw once and the fish bit on the fly. We could see that it was a big salmon, and he did not use more than about 10 minutes to get it onto land. And I remember that being the most amazing salmon I had ever seen, even to this day. It had just made its way up the river from the ocean. It had louse and beautiful silver skin. It weighed 24 kilos. I had to hold back my tears. It was an extraordinary experience. Morty was interested in taking records, so he had used a line intended for fish that weighed up to 7.5 kilos. Luckily for us, this salmon had just made its way from the ocean and were exhausted. If it had the strength, it would have snapped his line in an instant. We had to make a trip to Stangelsen and take a photo of it, and that photo is still hanging there till this day. Sometime afterwards, we received a form we had to sign, acknowledging that we witnessed Morty catching the salmon with that line and the weight. It became an official International Game Fish Association world record. It was just an unbelievable experience to take part in.
Vet at jeg stakk 1 uke, og
I used to have a 9-to-5 job with 3 weeks of vacation during the summer. For one of those weeks, I was a boatman. Every year, I looked forward to that 1 week, because that week was my ultimate vacation. The weather was always beautiful during the third period after midsummer, so rarely did I feel cold. I can imagine getting exhausted after being a boatman for 3 weeks, but during that 1 week I rowed, I had the best vacation. I always had pleasant fishermen along with me. Being a boatman was great, doing the one thing I loved the most, and still getting paid.
Det er ikke så mange år siden jeg var i Datsika og fisket.
Me and a couple of friends were fishing in Datsika a few years back, when a salmon bit my fly as I was fishing from land. We all threw ourselves in our boat and made our way downstream. It wasn't until we reached Nedre Datsika that I noticed that my line kept going, even though I was reeling in. I had a narrow reel equipped on my rod, and I must not have tied my knot tight enough. Also, my line was not completely dry either. So I grabbed the line, thinking that my reel was damaged, and as I did this, I told the others I had to cut the line. No, no, they shouted, as I grabbed a pair of scissors and separated the line from the reel. I passed the line to my friends, while I kept taming the salmon with my rod. My line had almost reached Gartvardhege, but I felt that the salmon was still there. With my friends pulling the line and me taming, we managed to reel the salmon in. It weighed 22 kilos. My friends could not believe it, so we had to pay Hans Ulrik in Sorresniva a visit to confirm the weight.
Nedskjæra er jo kanskje en av de beste fiskeplassene.
Nedskjæra is probably one of the best fishing spots you'll ever get to visit. On one of my visits there, I brought along a diver named Anders Lamberg, as he was tasked with checking the conditions of the riverbed. As he was diving, I enjoyed a cup of coffee on land, along with another researcher. Suddenly, Anders burst up from the river. "Oh my God, you will not believe this," he expelled. He had seen more than 20 salmon on each side of the river. He was so amazed, he had to dive down for another look, but they were already gone. One time, someone from Alta caught well over 30 salmon there in one night. The river was buzzing with salmon. They were jumping so frequently, you could practically tell where the next one would show up. You probably could have photographed the salmon while it was jumping. So Nedskjæra is probably one of the best spots in the Alta River, and it frequents many of the best fishing stories told by Ali.
Min favorittplass er jo egentlig Øverskjæra.
My favorite spot in the Alta River is Övre Skjæra. It's not so dependent on the water level, as the river runs deep there, and the location it's at is just amazing. I also used to spend quite some time at the cabin there before Werner Vonheim purchased it. I enjoy spending time there and have caught my fair share of salmon there. During the 90s, I was a boatman there alongside Kjetil Wisløff, and I remember the first time we were rowing for Frank Church. Frank is 90 years old now and still an eager fisher. We had just finished in Nedskjæra and had made our way up to Övre Skjæra when he caught a fish. It was of average size, around 10 kilos, and he was not hesitant reeling it in. Although there are some big rocks along the riverside, there usually isn't any trouble hooking a fish there. This happened many years ago though, before we practiced catch and release. Kjetil approached the salmon and hooked it with his gaff, and started running towards land. He then slipped and fell, and the salmon got off both the hook and the fly. He yelled at me to catch the salmon before it got away, and I threw myself on it, but the salmon slipped my grasp. It was not easy handling the slippery salmon among the rocks. At first, we were all a bit quiet, before me and Kjell started arguing. Frank did not understand a word we were saying, but he understood that it was an unusual happening. We went back fishing after taking some time to cool off, and as Kjetil was rowing, I scouted the river. I noticed something disturbing the water surface, and it turned out to be the salmon we hooked earlier, just floating there, barely alive. We made our way over and hooked it again, and we got it on board. It was an amusing experience. Faith had decided that the salmon was ours.
Altså man skrur av alt som heter bryter med tenker på det utenom elva.
You shut out all your thoughts. It's only you and the river. As a boatman for 20 years, I made lifelong friends on the river. We don't discuss money or anything else really. We're just mates out fishing together. That's what they enjoy the most about coming to the Alta River. To have the same guide every year. To make friends. That's what they appreciate. It does not matter if the season is good or not. They enjoy their time equally as much. Here you see the water level gauge that is painted on the rocks in Nedre Kista. The gauge is important for the boatmen as they need to know the water level before making their way up the rapids. It takes an experienced boatman to maneuver the rapids Batagoski and Gilvo. The rapids are wild and the rocks are large. One must follow the proper route. If someone is unlucky, they could end up destroying their boat. That's why the Alta River requires experienced boatmen.
Når man kommer til Batagoski, så
I've made my way up Batagoski countless times, but I still have respect for the forces at play there. I cross my chest before I start my way upstream through the rapids.
første gang jeg kjørte, jeg hadde bare suttet på og
The boatmen that were supposed to show me the route through the rapids had an engine malfunction. So the first time I made my way up the rapids, I had no one to show me where to go. I asked my friend that came along with me if we should wait for the other boat, but he told me to just go for it, so I did. And it turned out well. Of course, I was proud of my accomplishment. This happened about 15 years ago, so it's not that long ago either.
Det er faktisk bare 3-4 år siden en kjempeopplevelse.
A few years back, I had an amazing experience while being a guide along with Erling Ivers. We were in Dango and had 2 fishermen along with us. After only 3 throws, one of the fishermen got a fish on the fly. It was really locked on as it swam downstream towards Gilvoniska. It crossed the river and stopped there, and we immediately realized that this was a big fish, and we tried to tame it for a while, but it went nowhere. I told Erling that we had to make our way downstream to lure the fish out from its spot, and as we started towards Gilvoniska, the salmon began to head towards the rapid Gilvo. We decided that we were going to back the boat towards Gilvo. I was ready with my landing net, and I managed to catch the fish by hoppet. It weighed 23.5 kilos. After that, we decided to head back up to Mikkeli and have lunch, before we moved downstream from Gilvo to fish some more. It then was the other fisherman's turn to try his luck, and only after 5 throws, he too hooked a salmon. It behaved just like the previous one, and swam towards the Batagoski rapids. It stopped right behind a large block of rock in the rapids. Again, we had to back the boat into the rapids to catch the fish. We managed to get the salmon in our landing net just downstream from Batagoski, and it turned out to weigh 18 kilos. We caught 2 large salmon with 5 throws apart. Something like that only happens in the Alta River.
Det er jo bare helt fantastisk. Han er jo en flott mann.
It is an amazing experience to be a part of. An honor. I don't see him as a king. To me, he's just an ordinary man. He is just like any other fisherman. A nice man. Of course, it's a bit special that he is our king, but from the moment we pick him up at the airport, till the moment he leaves Alta after his 2 days, we are just two mates out fishing together. This year, it was our 25th anniversary since the first time we started fishing here as the King of Norway in 1994. And he has been here every year since. It is very special, those 2 amazing days we spend up in Mikkeli. Each year, he has 3 mates along with him, and they all tell me that every year he looks forward to spending some time in the Alta River. Up there, he can go for a hike without having to bring his bodyguards, and he loves sitting on the porch at the Mikkeli cabin. When you arrive at Steinfossen on your way to Sautso, you need to park your boat below the Gabo Rapids and make your way across on foot before continuing in another boat.
Alle ser jo et menneske inn i en eller annen stein der.
Everyone sees some shape of a person in the rocks. The tale I've heard comes from Odd Hansen, who heard it from Gammel-Jørgen. The tale tells of Gabo-kjerringa, a figure seen in the rocks in the Gabo Rapids. She is on her knees in the rapids, with her ass pointing upwards and her hair sweeping upstream. You can see her clearly as she blocks the passage through the rapids. She decides who gets to catch fish upstream. It is custom to pour one shot to oneself and pour one shot to Gabo-kjerringa. One time I sacrificed to her as me and 3 friends made our way upstream to fish in the center zone of Sautso. I told Arnfinn Pettersen about this, and he took this very seriously, as he is very superstitious. Then I asked my other friend Odd if he wanted to sacrifice, but he was feeling ill and did not wish to partake. Then I asked Einar if he wanted to join me and Arnfinn, but he said that it would be a waste to pour liquor in the river. That day, I caught a salmon weighing 24 kilos, along with a few smaller ones. Arnfinn caught one too. However, Odd lost all the fish that bit, and Einar did not see a single fish. Once, I went up there before midsummer with my neighbor, Kjell Haldorsen, to see Gabo-kjerringa. I told him about the tale, but he could not see her in the rocks. After we had taken our boat off land, we poured ourselves a shot. He decided to go and have another look, and that's when I heard him yell, "Olav! I can see her clearly now, and she is really blocking our course." We did not get any fish that day.
I Søtso liker meg jo best.
The fantastic nature, the canyon reaching far above the river, and the cabin placed on the peninsula is why I find Søtso to be the best spot in the entire Alta River. It is paradise. I've been to many places around the world, but nowhere compares to Søtso. Even though I've not had much luck there these last few years, I have been there before the dam was put up, which ruined the fishing spot. During the 70s, one could buy a 3-day permit for the entire Søtso zone, and one time I was there, we managed to get more than 25 salmon in 3 days. Even still, the Søtso zone is amazing. Once you make your way across Svartfossen and pull your boat to Toppen, it is beautiful.
God historie, det jo pappa har fortalt fra, det faktisk fra begynnelsen av 60-tallet.
One of the best stories I know is one that my dad told me about the time he and his dad were in Søtso before midsummer in the 60s. They describe it as an El Dorado. This was before the dam was erected. My granddad had seen an enormous salmon near Dørmenen. Now this was at his spot, and he only wanted people to fish with flies there. The story went something like this, that even after a week of trying, they had no luck at catching the salmon. That's when my granddad caved in and let my father use the hook Storøyen to try to catch it. And the salmon bit on immediately. It swam straight to Habalati, deep down in the river. They tried to tame the fish. They even tried to pull it with a boat, but it would not move an inch. So they went on land, grabbed a coffee mug, tied it to the line, and rowed out with the boat again. They slid the mug down the line, and when it hit the salmon, it swam. The reel was empty before they even had time to start their motor. The salmon got away. A year later, my dad heard from Tverrelvdalen that someone had caught an enormous salmon in Harestrømmen, and that it could have been the same salmon they had lost a year earlier. The salmon had a line and a Storøyer still hooked on. It was so big that they had to carry it from the river in 2 bags. They said that each side weighed 16 kilos, so the salmon could have weighed as much as 40 kilos. So they do exist in the river. That's why Dørmenen is so special to me. I've seen great salmon up there myself, and I've caught some and lost some.